Look, the harsh reality for U.S. soccer, for players in the U.S. that we don't like to talk about too much. We like to brush under the rug. We When it does come up from the people who are going to be honest with you about development, it gets flipped around. Oh my gosh, you're one of those parents, right? It becomes, if you ask a player to do more than the bare minimum being showing up to team practices. And I will tell you, from well over a decade of experience as a coach and coaching multiple teams and training multiple teams and players and getting to know a lot of other coaches, a lot of parents and too many players think that bare minimum of showing up to your team training sessions, to your team practices all the time is too much. That is how far away we are from competing with the rest of the world. We simply do not want to do what is necessary. American players, and I apologize if you're not one of these players or parents, and most likely you are not, because the ones that are not paying attention to this video, right? They are not signed up to my free newsletter. They are not in the Facebook group. They have not bought the programs and done the training. They are the ones that really need to hear this message. So if you have any of those who think, showing up to the team sessions is optional, maybe you might want to let them know about this. So we are going to talk about that a little bit in terms of what you need to do outside of your team session, because if you only show up to your team session, you are simply not going to become the player that you want to be, the player that you should be, the player that you deserve to be if you are competing and trying to reach another level. Now, look, I always make this caveat. I think soccer is for everyone. I think if as a player, you are one of those who just wants to go out with your friends and have fun and all of that, do it. And I think that's where rec soccer comes in. And I know with limitless teams and ages and clubs wanting to make money, it's difficult. A lot of places don't even have rec soccer anymore, which is an absolute shame. But if you have it, play in a certain league or whatever, you should still play. And rec should be that for you. And if it's not available, maybe you find enough friends, hopefully, that you can just go out and play and have fun. That is 100% something that should be an option for everyone. Okay. Now, of course, I am talking about in the rest of this video what I'll call competitive players, players that are going out on the travel team, players that want to be on the A team and want to play in a certain league and all of that. You need to do more than simply show up for your team. Okay. Now, I'm gonna relate a little story that I think important, and we talk about the rest of the world. And that the reason I'm talking about this is because I'm trying to put U.S. training and practice and our expectations as a country in context. A number of years ago, I was at a game for the younger sister of one of my players. Okay, and I got to talking to her parents. Her father happened to be from Italy. That's where he grew up. He got a job. He came over to the States, and we got to talking about the differences for youth players, the differences in Italy versus here. Now, Italy's got their own problems at the national team level right now, but that's a story for another day. And, he said one of the biggest differences, which sort of reinforced my belief in what I'm seeing in the US and what I know around the world, he said, is everywhere else, and in places like Italy, it is cultural. Young players, young kids over in Italy always have a ball at their feet. Whether they're playing soccer or not, they have a ball at their feet. We simply do not do that in America. Again, 99% of our players go to their team practices a couple times a week and they never touch the ball at any other time. That is not going to get it done if you want to be the best player you can be. It's kind of like, and I've shared this story with people before. In the U.S., it's different. In the U.S., or at least it used to be, it was more basketball, and you'd hear those stories about the great players growing up when they were a kid, and they, even when they weren't playing, they were dribbling the ball everywhere they went. Going down the street to a neighbor's house, dribbling the basketball. I think it was Magic Johnson would talk about how he would sleep with the basketball in his hands, right? We don't have that equivalent with soccer in this country. Players aren't walking around, oh, I've got to go to two houses down to get something for my mom, okay? And I'm gonna dribble the ball on the way there. We don't have that. Even in our competitive soccer, we don't really have that, right? You look at countries like the Netherlands, where young players are averaging, 10,000 touches a day. 10,000 touches a day. They're playing pickup constantly. They have a ball at their feet everywhere they go. As I said, it's touch, 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 touch all day long, all different kinds of touches. In the US, for the most part, and I know some teams have three and they get older and they get into ECNL and they're teenagers and they might even have four, practices a week. But in general, 1 hour to 90-minute club practices a week. And then think about how those practices are run and think about how many touches you as a player actually get in those sessions. It is not a lot. You may be competing with 10,000 touches a day. Well, you might be lucky to get 1,000 for the week if all you're doing is going to your team practices, right? And you simply can't make up for that. You're not going to make up for that at the higher level. You're never going to close that gap if you're not training on your own, if you're not playing pickup on your own. If players don't develop a love for the ball and get thousands of touches at home, we're always going to be behind. They're always going to be behind. It doesn't matter who your coach is. It doesn't matter what youth club you play for. It doesn't matter what league you play in or how much the club costs. It may seem in your little pond that it's a big deal, but it isn't. It is not that big of a deal when you look at the broader picture of what is going on. It's simply, there's like I can't remember the exact quote, although I'm pretty close. Johan Cruyff once was asked about how, he stated that he played, when he was at Ajax as a youth player at the academy, and he said, they trained 4 hours a week, I think it was, and I forget what age. He was younger. He said, we trained 4 hours a week. He said, and I played in the street, i.e., pickup, away from the confines of structured development with coaches and so forth. I played pickup 4 hours a day. Where do you think I learned to play soccer? Or, of course, he said football. Is it the 4 hours a day of pickup? 4 hours, keep that in mind, 4 hours a day of pickup, or is the 4 hours a week in the club setting? Now, that's not to diminish the club and the things you learn. There's a lot of important things. I mean, if you're not actually learning somewhere from somebody the proper way for, in terms of technique for certain things, just as a quick example, I don't want to digress too much, but I'd say 9 out of 10 young kids, when they strike the ball, from what I have witnessed personally, and far too many coaches don't correct it, their plant foot is not in the right place, which makes it very difficult for everything else to be good. And that's why you see a lot of poor ball strikes and a lot of inconsistent ball strikes, because the plant foot is simply not in the right place. So again, you need someone to teach you that. But that's why I say there's that balance. Do you need that? You need that pickup as well. We simply don't have that in soccer over here. We have that, or we, at least I think it's less now. We had that a lot in basketball. Although I don't think we have it as much. So let's get into how much training are we talking about? I think if you're talking about the younger kids, and parents also especially hold on, and kids, I think you'll appreciate this too. I'm going to make another point about that in terms of expectations, because I know the idea of training outside of the club, outside of the team, is upsetting for a lot of parents and players. I think that's just so very, very harsh. Anyway, so look, for young players age 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe they're just getting started. How about 10 minutes a day, 10, 15 minutes a day with the ball? And initially, that can be all juggling if you want. And it can be all just getting touches. And you don't even, now I think doing a little bit of that structured, like go to the soccerspecialist.com, where I have the 7-day ball control program, which is free, and following along. That is important. But does it all have to be that? It doesn't at 6, 7, 8, just have fun. You as a parent, even go out. This is where we can get into the unstructured stuff, like I talked about in the previous episode, where it can be important at a young age, just falling in love with the ball, teaching them cool things or goofy things that they may not even be able to do, but they get exposed to. They see how much fun it can be as you get better and you can start doing different things that are just fun. I think that's really, really important. And you can get that in 10, 15 minutes a day. And the reason I say every day is just because it starts building habits, and habits are so powerful. Habits are so important for young players to establish them early. Come on, adults. You all know it's true. When you all probably have bad habits you've been trying to break, and how difficult that is, how difficult it is to add positive new habits. Like, I don't know, eating differently, eating more, eating healthier, going to the gym. It's not easy, right? So help your kids at young ages start developing positive habits. I'm not asking them to go out for an hour plus every day. 10 minutes, 15 minutes. You know, incorporate certain things like have fun, juggle the ball, goof around a bit, and then, try in 30-second bursts or whatever to do some toe taps, or, to do some foundation bell drills, inside, outside, that type of thing. Very simple patterns. Okay. Then we get a little older. Maybe you're getting into middle school. We're starting 10, 11, 12, getting into the teenage year, where hopefully at this point, a player has decided they really are enjoying the game. They're enjoying playing soccer and they want to get better. They like the competitive element of it. They want to become a better player. It's simply not going to happen only showing up to your training sessions, right? They really want to be good. The expectations change of what you want to accomplish. So now we're talking 30, 60 minutes a day is real. And there can be off days. Don't get me wrong. You can definitely incorporate off days. For all my ball control stuff that you can get at thesoccerspecialist.com, they all incorporate a day off, all of them, right? So, and they also incorporate different levels depending on, you don't always have 60 minutes a day, and it's not always going to be about ball control. So there are levels to it where you can get 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and it's all adjusted in the program. So you can check those out at thesoccerspecialist.com as well. So these are kind of averages, and there's going to be life adjustments, right? There's going to be different things. I mean, if you're working on conditioning, like say Dominate Game Day, which also does incorporate touches as well, then you're not going to spend 60 minutes a day also on ball control stuff, if that makes sense, right? But maybe, let's say you do an hour a day. Maybe it's 15 minutes of ball control work. Maybe it's 15 minutes knocking the ball against a wall. Maybe you're just going to have fun and do some juggling, and maybe even work on learning tricks, stuff that you might not even use in a game, but it is fun to do. And that, that reinforces that motivation and that love of the game, right? Things like that. And then, of course, as you veer from middle school into high school, and maybe at this point, you're already starting to think about, maybe I want to play in college, or at the very least, maybe I want to at least become the best possible player I can be over my high school years. Maybe I want to become my high school team captain. Maybe I want to lead, maybe you want to lead the team in goals, or, get them to the state tournament or whatever it be. Maybe you're trying to get into ECNL, right? You want to play varsity as a freshman. Maybe it's MLS next. Maybe, again, maybe it's college, maybe it's not, but you have higher goals. Again, it all boils down to, if we dial it back a bit, maybe it's simply you want to become the best player you can possibly be and get the most enjoyment of that, and not look back later on and say, man, if I had done this, if I had done that, I could have been a little better, and that could have been, I could have had this opportunity, and it could have been a lot more fun. So now we're talking to 60 minutes plus, depending on what you're doing, because then you get into things where like conditioning is really going to matter. Ball work, wall work. Maybe you're just doing specific first touch drills. Maybe you've been taking the free kicks, or you want to take the free kicks for your team. So you're spending 15 minutes, a half hour here and there, working literally just on your free kicks, just on your corners, just on your crosses and that sort of thing. Now, maybe you're also spending time on strength and power and soccer specific conditioning, because you want to get faster, you want to get quicker, right? You're all in on Impact Soccer Performance, which is at impactsoccerperformance.com. See what I did there, right? And again, then this becomes all these things I've just listed. They're not all necessarily on the same day, right? They become broken up. Maybe you hit all of these things over a week or over 2 weeks, because you're emphasizing different things. Because I get it. We're not pros. I get, we're not talking about 4, 5, 6 hours a day. I'm always trying to help you get the most you can get at max an hour a day, and that hopefully there's always a day off in there. More isn't always better. It's quality over quantity, but there has to be obviously a minimum quantity. And then it's about getting the most, the quality out of that quantity, out of that time that you do dedicate to it. So, one thing I wanted to talk about that I think is important, and I brought this up before, is I like to use the piano lesson analogy because I think a lot of parents, and sometimes it's other instruments, right? But piano seems to be the most common where, at some point, at least for a little bit, because it teaches a lot of good things. Not just, I think it's great to learn music, it's great to learn an instrument, but it also just teaches certain important things that you can use in life. So I think a lot of parents will be like, hey, taking piano lessons. So not cheap, right? Learning a musical instrument is not cheap. And for the most part, you usually have one lesson a week for an hour because, again, it is not cheap. So let me ask you something, parents. You're not learning the instrument, not learning the piano in this case, just in that 1 hour a week where you're at your lesson. And that piano teacher is going to give homework. And the student is going to have to learn something by the next session and play it for the teacher. So, of course, the question is, because for some reason, when it becomes a sport like soccer, we get this whole, oh my gosh, you're one of those crazy sports parents, and you're gonna ruin their love for the game by forcing them to do this and forcing them to do that. But are you going to continue to pay for that piano lesson if your child is not doing the homework, is not practicing away from the piano lesson time? We all know the answer is no. You might for a little while, you might hope that it changes, but you're going to nag and you're going to eventually get the ultimatums. And it's eventually going to be they're going to do the homework the teacher gives them, they're going to practice on their own, or the piano lesson stops. How is soccer different, especially when you're putting so much more time and probably so much more money into it, right? Team practices is where, for the most part, you're going to learn team concepts. Sadly, not a whole lot of coaches focus much time on the individual, which we need to do more of, but that's, again, another story for another day. But home training, home training is where you build up your individual skill. When I say individual skill, I may be talking about stuff that's important for the team, right? Passing, that's what wall work is for, right? So if you skip the home stuff, you are going to struggle. And now if you do, going back to the habits thing, here's what I want to do. 10 minutes start. I don't care what age you are right now. If you haven't been doing it, start at 10 minutes a day. No excuses, no missed days, no overthinking it. Because once it becomes a habit, then you can build from there and you can add more time and you can add more things. And so I'll give you an example, a great way to do it. Or you know what? I said 10 minutes a day. What if we do it even less than that? What if we do it like 2 or 3 minutes? You get up in the morning, literally the first thing you do, keep your ball there. You can do this right in your room as long as you have, a foot square of space because your floor is probably not completely covered with clothes, right? Get your ball, do 100 toe taps, 100 bells. That's it. Do that and build on that. Add to that and go from there. Maybe once you do 100 toe taps and 100 bells, you add another simple pattern that might simply be outside, inside, outside, inside. And that's very simple. Start with your left foot. Use the outside of your foot. You're going laterally, right? We're going like this. We're not going forward or backward. Outside of the left, then inside the left. Outside of the right, inside to the right, right? Do that. When I say 100, you could do 100 of that pattern, which would be actually be 400 touches of the ball, or you could do 25 of that pattern, which would be the 100 touches, and simply add and add until you're doing maybe 10 minutes, maybe it's 12 minutes, maybe you're doing 1,000 touches instead. So maybe you've done 10 patterns, 10 different patterns you've built up to 1,000 that are 100 touches each, which is 1,000 touches in a day. That's 365,000 touches over the year. Depending on the pattern, depending how good and fast you get, that's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 minutes, something like that. So, and then build from there and start adding and incorporating other things as that becomes a habit. It will eventually get to the point where it's going to feel weird for you to not do it. as opposed to the struggle to do it. And the reason I say first thing in the morning, because now it's out of the way, now it's done. You don't have to think about it. You don't have, oh, well, I've got to do this first. Oh, I got to do this homework. Then I've got to eat dinner. Then I've got to do this. And the next thing you know, you're going to bed and you haven't gotten to it. Right. Anyway, that is it in terms of breaking it down. Hopefully you got something out of this. Hopefully you're ready to jump in and start building a habit of getting touches on the ball away from your training. I'm going to leave it there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Appreciate it. As always, do me a favor, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel. Really do appreciate it. I will talk to you